Hello, today I've got another nail art look for you. This time for a start, I was trying very hard to have the rabbit pillow on screen, but it didn't quite work out. Either way, the nail art is obviously about rabbits. I really love rabbits, I think they're very adorable, and this week I wanted to paint them on my nails, which was actually quite a challenge, so let's get started. As a background, I use this nail polish by A. England. It's called Cathy, and it's sort of a lavender shade with teal-ish shimmers in it. It's very pretty, but very difficult to describe. Also, I use heaps and heaps of acrylic paint as usual when doing looks like these. I just like having as many as possible here, so yeah. You know, it's better to not use one than to have one too little, I guess. Also, I use the detail brush. I either need to buy a new one sometime soon or cut this one because it's getting sort of weird. Also, I use these very old Rhinestones, which I bought at the budget store in the Netherlands here ages ago. But it contains two swords that sort of look like flowers, so I use those. Also, I used a wax pencil, which had a piece of dust on it, yeah, to pick up those rhinestones. Got this off Born pretty store ages ago. And then lastly, I used my Catrice Gel Like top coat, which is my favorite top coat. I always use it, and it's especially useful for acrylic paint because it's pretty thick, so it evens it out. So yeah, on the first nail I started out with a regular brown rabbit. Started out with his head and I sort of tried to paint him at an angle. Both because I like to challenge myself and I think it looks nicer when animals are at an angle, and also because rabbits are actually easier to paint at an angle in my opinion than from the side because they don't have a lot of profile on their face, you know. They're rabbits, they're cute, but they don't have a lot of facial profile. Not sure how to describe it. Either way, this was just the easiest way for me to paint it. So yeah, it's just standing on four legs with his little tail up and his little ears up. And what I always do, by the way, is just paint the complete shape of the rabbit, as you can see me doing here. And then later on, I'll actually start on defining the rabbit more. As long as I know where all the limbs are, it's fine. So yeah, at this point, I'm actually going to define them with a slightly darker shade of brown. I always do this while the paint is still wet because the easier it is, the better. And yeah, blending is just a lot easier when the paint is still wet because you can just, you know, smear it all together. If the paint is already dry, you'd have to work with very wet paints and sort of blend it with water and try to not, you know, accidentally remove the paint that's below there, and that's just a lot more complicated. Which on the nails especially is just not a good thing in my opinion because it's hard enough already to paint stuff on nails without making it incredibly difficult. Tips of the ears are highlighted with some yellow. And then I decided to give this little rabbit some white markings. You could just do regular, you know, wild rabbits, but yeah. I wanted different types of rabbits on all three of the nails I'm going to put a rabbit on, so yeah. This one is going to get white markings on the bottom of its tail, on its belly, and also on its feet. And then also on his face, like where his snout is going to be and where his eyes are going to be. And I'm just dabbing the brush in there to really blend it out well. And yeah, the inside of his ears I made yellow just to make them stand out a little bit more. And then I started on his face. I started out with the nose because that's actually the easiest part. And then just very carefully added the mouth. Try to make him smile a little. I'm not going for completely realistic here, just sort of semi-realistic, I guess. As long as it looks cute. Yeah, then I also added his eyes. I did them in blue rather than brown because blue is easier to see on a brown backdrop. Obviously, he's also going to get some pupils. And then I'm just going to leave it at this for this particular rabbit for now. Oh, also, almost forgot to add some whiskers. And I also added a teeth, by the way. But I'm not going to do an outline yet because I rather have the paint dry before I do that. So I'm going to move on to the next rabbit now, which is going to be a white rabbit with brownish markings. And this one is going to stand on his hind legs, sniffing at a flower, which I'm going to add later. So yeah, this is also a pretty easy shape to paint a rabbit in. And yeah, actually overall rabbits I think aren't really all that difficult to paint. Well, They don't have a very extremely defined shape, so on one hand it makes them easy to paint, on the other hand it makes them quite difficult because, you know, a horse is always going to look like a horse as long as it's vaguely horse shaped, while with a rabbit, if it doesn't go well, then the rabbit just doesn't look like a rabbit anymore. So yeah, that's quite a difficult thing. Either way, I tried my best to make them actually look like rabbits this time. And the markings on his ears are going to be dark brown. He's also going to get his markings on the top of his face and also on his back. I used to know all the types of rabbits, like all the special like breeds and all. But I can't for the life of me remember what sort of breed this was supposed to be. It is a specific breed, I just really can't remember. But yeah, it's also going to get those markings on his tail. And I'm just trying to blend them out quite a lot because I didn't want it to be too dark on him. He's also going to get a blue little eye and also obviously a little face. On this one I didn't add the teeth because, well, it's white, so, you know, white teeth wouldn't really stand out all that much. And then on the middle nail I tried to make it easy for myself, but it actually turned out to be way more difficult than I anticipated it to be, to paint a rabbit's face. Like literally just head on my nails. I tried to make the style fit in with the style of the other one, so I didn't want to make it too cartoonish. But it's actually quite difficult when painting a rabbit like straight on, right in the face. So yeah, but I tried my best. And also with this one I did some shaping. Because the rabbit itself is yellow, I used a very sort of yellowish, pale-ish, medium brownish shade. Well, you can see what the shade looks like here. And I also used it on his floppy ear to make it stand out more. And also on his little face to make his snout look as if it's actually, you know, closer to the camera than the rest of his face. And it really blended it out a lot. His face was actually the easiest part. I just did a little tiny nose and then a little tiny mouth. What I always do when using black is just dip the paintbrush in the black and then, you know, make it go over the page or over the page of the notebook. I always put all the paint on the page of a notebook. Either way, I drag it over there to make the brush go flat, so I really have a tiny part of the brush to actually use the black with, because it's the most difficult color to remove if, you know, you add too much. So, yeah. This one also got blue eyes and also black pupils. I actually, because the paint was very wet, I could actually, off camera, because it was easier, drag the eyes down a little afterwards, because they were a little bit too high on his face at this point. Because his eyes are so big, I did add the highlights to his eyes already. I usually prefer to do that when the eyes are already dry, but, you know, when eyes are that large, it's easier to do it right then and there. Then I started on doing the background. Yes, I did the background last. That just seemed like a good idea today. Yeah, it's just going to be grass on, you know, both the rabbits that actually have their feet visible. 2 shades of green just to make it look a little bit more detailed. And then I added some grass because this particular rabbit needs to have something to eat. And then I did basically the same thing on the white rabbits. I just really made sure to not go too much over the rabbit with the grass. But if you go over the rabbit a little bit, it doesn't matter because, you know, it's going to sit in the grass. Not float above it, so yeah. Actually makes it slightly more realistic even. And this one is going to have a flower that is sniffing it. So yeah, the green is going to be quite high up here. I didn't just want to do one stripe, so I did 2 stripes, but only one of them is going to be a flower. That's the tallest one. Also with acrylic paint, if you get some on your fingers while doing stuff like this, just wipe off the brush and then just wipe the paint off your skin with a clean brush. Works perfectly fine. And then I also try to make the green a little bit more pointy. This brush used to be narrower. Either way, then I very carefully did the outline. That's like the most nerve-wracking part of the entire nail art. It also took me the longest, although this nail art overall, it only took me about half an hour, which I was quite surprised about, but I'd say 10 minutes of that were doing the outline. Because, you know, something goes wrong there, it's sort of awful. Then I gave the other 2 rabbits a eye highlight, which made them look a lot more lively and a lot less creepy. And yeah. Then it's time to add the little flowers. I just glued them all with top coat. You could use actual nail glue, but I prefer to use top coat just because, you know, I have it there anyways. So this rabbit is going to have a little blue flower, and this one is going to have a pink flower, which is actually a star, but, you know, doesn't quite look like a star from distance, I guess. And I wanted to have two different colors. So yes, it's going to sit there. And then once all the acrylic paint is completely dry, it's time to add top coat. Do make sure the acrylic paint is completely dry, otherwise it's going to smear underneath the brush, which would be a waste. That actually happened with my nail art last week, which I had to fix off camera real quick. Yeah, and I also try to really make sure that everything is covered so none of the acrylic paint will wash off if I wash my hands anytime soon. Which I probably will, because I do wash my hands quite often, actually. Anyway, here is the completed look. Really had a lot of fun doing this. Like, I really love rabbits. Blah. Yeah. Actually used to have pet rabbits as a child. I just think they're one of the most adorable species of animals in the world. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing these nails. I really enjoyed wearing them. Hope you enjoyed watching them. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye!